Hello and welcome to Pierre the Chef. We've got a new episode here, and we're doing things a little bit differently, I guess. We're not doing this on a weekend like we normally do, since I'm off from work for a while here for this week. So decided to try to do a midweek one just to be different, and starting at 6 p.m. instead of 1 p.m. Eastern time, and so that's a little different. And I'm the one now who has like an actual background and light set up and stuff, and Steve is the one who has a bookshelf visible behind him. So we're just mixing everything up this time.
I didn't see. We didn't coordinate. You sprung the fancy lighting and backdrop on me unannounced.
Yes.
So I'm the one who looks like the dipshit now.
So
and you're the prepared
episode number 21. You know, it's 19 to 0 that I was. So it's only fair that it happens once, and then we'll see what happens going forward. But didn't you say that's only in the bookshelf was only there blocking up space because of the Christmas setup?
Yeah. For the rest of this month, until the Christmas tree gets taken down. Yeah, the bookshelf is usually in the living room, where in the corner where the Christmas tree goes. So when it's time to put up the Christmas tree, the bookshelf comes in and lives in here for a month or so, and then we take the Christmas tree down and exile it back into its box over here. And then the bookshelf can go back to where it belongs. And then I can I can do a little bit more work when it's time to do live streams and put up my backdrop. So
fascinating.
Yeah.
Just like my fascinating week so far, which started with cleaning the bathrooms on Monday and then having the sink clog up and then having to spend hours and hours getting that sorted out, which I finally did. And, you know, I can tell I'm not the handiest person in the world, because when I take care of a minor problem like that, I feel such a sense of triumph. Like, I was actually able to take care of this myself.
Oh, for sure.
I probably shouldn't feel as triumphant and proud as I do just for unclogging a drain, but I do.
Well, I mean, it's an accomplishment if you're not a trained professional. I mean, I fixed a leak.
The trained professional wouldn't do much that I didn't do. He just has better equipment, so he gets it done faster with the experience and the equipment, you know?
Sure. That's...
At least for a problem like this. I mean, if something like a pipe is leaking inside the wall, that's a bit beyond my ability to handle. But for a clog drain, I can do that. It just takes me a little bit longer than it takes him.
We'll go with that. It's an accomplishment.
Yeah, that's what we'll go with.
Yeah, so, I could have done. I could have done what he did. I just didn't want to. So anyway,
he would do it a lot more smoothly, and it would look a lot better and professional.
Yeah.
I'm clearly amateur hour.
He would have done it better than I did, but I could still do it. I mean, let's not. You know.
It's not like we're dealing with explosives here, you know.
Or
electric. I don't mess with just about anything electric, because electricity will absolutely kill you if you screw up.
Yeah,
that's a different matter.
You don't want to die. I mean,
right.
It's probably
that's fairly reasonable, I think.
Yeah, plumbing's not gonna kill you. I mean, not right away. I mean, you could.
If you have the lead plumbing, you got issues. Lead pipes.
Right.
Most of those are gone now out of houses.
Yeah. Thanks to the government, Big Brother coming in with their regulations. It's crushing the small businessman. What happened to the lead pipe industry? That's what I want to know. Look, how many jobs have been lost? And the lead paint? I mean...
Libertarians waving their fists in the air. I have a right to lead pipes.
I have a right to slowly poison myself and my family.
When lead pipes are outlawed, only outlaws will have lead pipes.
Is that the world you want to live in?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
That would be nice, actually.
Because even as it is, we have too many crazy people. I'd like to have fewer crazy people.
Do you really want more people with heavy metal poisoning in the population? I don't think so. So anyway... I'm not sure how we can smoothly segue from that into our topic, but let's give it a shot. So, actually, you suggested the topic, as you usually do, because as is the case with, I think, every show that I co-host, even this one, which is on my YouTube channel, my co-host actually ends up doing most of the work to prepare for the show.
Well, the work that I did was basically like, I sent you the message. It's like, if you want to do it at a different time, it's like, do you have any ideas for the subject? Because I haven't really given it much thought. And I said, well, how about we could talk about how people whitewash the dead? And you're like, I love that. Let's do it. And that was the work that I did.
Yeah.
So it's not real complicated.
It's more than I did. I didn't have anything. But yeah, so we're going to talk
your
about
own videos. You have your Facepalm 5, and you have your various other things that you do, and so you're coming up with topics for that all the time.
That's right. And I'm not going to waste one on this. If I come up with a good topic, I'm not wasting it on this. Hey, by the way, we forgot to mention.
Yeah.
Pierre's not here.
No, he's not. I think he was my understanding, he was actually caught by surprise by the midweek thing and actually couldn't get off work.
Oh, is that what he told you?
That's what he told me. Did he tell you something else?
Well, he didn't tell me anything, but I thought that he might be mad at me, and maybe that was why. Because here's what happened.
Well, he's still mad at you from last time from the whole Patreon thing.
Yeah, he's pissed at me because of the Patreon.
He's always pissed at you. It's a thing.
I don't know. I don't know what his problem. But
it's like you and Andy.
Yeah, boy, that'll make like 3 people laugh.
Yeah, that's going way back.
That's going way back. Nobody knows who Andy is.
Even Andy, if Andy was watching this, he wouldn't realize I was referring to him at first.
Like, wait a minute, are they talking about me? And then he would cry.
Yeah.
So no, Pierre was mad at me because of the whole Patreon thing, and I felt bad about that, even though it was totally Pierre's fault, because he was really upset, and I could tell he was really upset, and even though it was his fault, I felt like I should reach out and try to make amends to him. So I went to give him a call, and I called him. That
always goes well.
Well, I called him and he wouldn't pick up, and I left him a message, and he never got back to me. So I called him again, same deal, didn't pick up.
Can I ask, did you leave like a polite message, or did you like use phrases like "you ignorant savage" or things like that in there?
I said, this is my...
I know that you have your moments.
I said, I was trying to be nice. I said,
okay.
I said, Pierre, it's Steve, call me.
That's fair.
And that was that was the first time. And then the second time I said, Steve, call me. I just said my name and I said, call me. So he didn't call me back. So finally I caught him on Instant Messenger on Facebook. Right. And I saw that he was online, and I messaged him and I said, hey, what's going on? And he said, well, I didn't call you back because you never called me back. And I was like, what are you talking about? So apparently what had happened was he had tried to call me like a few days before I called him, and I didn't pick up because when I got my new phone here, I forgot to put his number in my contacts. So when it came up, it was an unknown number, and I just didn't answer it. And then I hadn't got my voicemail set up yet, so he couldn't even leave me a message. And I told him, I said, Pierre, that was an accident. Like I just forgot to put your contact information in my phone. It was innocent. I didn't do it on purpose, like when I chose not to put my mom's number on my new phone. It was just an accident.
I'm not commenting on that.
And but I don't think he believed me. So I think that, maybe he had to work, maybe it was the different time, but I think also he might be like, whatever he was pissed at me for about the Patreon thing, I think I may have made it worse because he thinks I was intentionally not answering his call. And you know how prissy he is and how he's very...
Well, he should know. It was nothing personal. You don't answer any of your calls.
No, I don't. Which is weird because I honestly did. When I got my new phone, I did transfer all of my contacts from the old phone into the new phone, except for my mother. And I had to do it manually because my old phone, I believe, is only one generation removed from the model that Agent Mulder used in season 2 of the X-Files. I couldn't just import everything automatically.
Yeah, because that was way back. Because they eventually upgraded him to one that had like a dot matrix display, so that he could get a message from a mysterious message from someone at the end of the one episode. They actually had to upgrade his phone to one of those that was just like the monochrome.
Yeah, so, exactly. Mine was it was similar to the model that Paulie dangerously used to use as a foreign object in WCW. No, it's not that old. That was like one of those brick phones, but it was still
rotary dial cellular phone.
Yeah, it was one of the first. Had a battery pack with a shoulder strap you had to carry with it, you know.
Didn't those things have a battery life of like 10 minutes, literally?
Yeah. You could work out what you want to say first before you pick up the phone and make the call, because it's not, you're only going to get one shot. You're not going to have time to chat. Yeah. So anyway,
technology moves on, because the phone you have, the phone I have, is probably more powerful than the spacecraft that landed on the moon, that brought man to the moon.
My God, yes. My God, yes. Yeah, it is ridiculous when you think about it. Like a smartphone like this, and mine's not even like a state-of-the-art model. I got an LG Rebel 4, which is like a new phone, but it's not like an iPhone or anything. It's not like fucking, you know, there's certain things that an iPhone can do that this one can't do. But yeah, I mean, the computing power in a smartphone is ridiculous. And it's like we flew to the moon. We built spacecraft that flew out of our solar system that are still flying in space right now, that have like 1,000th of the computing power, 1,000,000th of the computing power that this thing has. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Of course, if the Apollo 11 spacecraft had used like iPhone software, they probably would have crashed and died, because the thing would have been throttled because they hadn't upgraded properly.
Yes.
And there's a new version out. You haven't gotten to that. We're going to throttle you, just like the was it Verizon or Comcast? Somebody did to the firefighters in California. They started throttling them for going over their cap during the fires.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, and also, I mean,
but that's capitalism.
Yeah, why shouldn't we charge the firefighters extra for using the phone during an emergency? Well, and also, if the iPhone, if you know, the spacecraft operated on the iPhone platform, they would probably, the mission would last so long that, you know, they would reach the end of support. I mean, there would no longer be a supported product by the time it got to Mars or wherever the hell it was going. Like, oh yeah, sorry, we discontinued support for that in 2017. So we can't talk to our ship anymore? Yeah, no, sorry.
Yeah, we sent it out there with Windows XP, and now you can't communicate with it anymore because XP isn't supported. Yeah, that sounds about right.
We'll give you a break if you want to upgrade to a new spacecraft. But anyway, so yeah.
Did we have a topic of some sort?
Because I think theoretically we're supposed to be talking about, well, because it actually worked out just perfectly, as we mentioned briefly before we went on the air here. You suggested that we talk about how people whitewash the recently dead and you know, play up their good side and ignore the bad side, and it just so happens that the day we decide to do this show is also the day when they had President George H.W. Bush's funeral in Washington, D.C. That just got over with a few hours ago. So what better time to talk about how we whitewashed the recently dead than today, when we just saw the whitewashing of the recently dead president.
Right, as opposed to a couple months ago, we had the whitewashing of John McCain, the recently dead congressman.
Yeah, oh God, yes.
It's just... I guess that the idea is, you know, with respect for the dead, that you don't want to just, you know, jump on somebody and, you know, like, you don't want to trash them, you know, you don't want to dance on their grave, but at the same time, you have to be honest about who and what people were. You know, we did that show a while back about how everybody is problematic.
Yeah.
And we tend not to acknowledge that once people have passed away. We pretend that they're suddenly saints, and we deify them. We point out all the great things that they did, and we ignore all the terrible things that they did, which is often something of a disservice to do something like that. You know, not to necessarily to them, but to everyone who was affected by them. Right. When you have political leaders like this, their decisions affect a lot of people. I mean, George H.W. Bush was president. His decisions affected millions, arguably billions of people around the world to some extent. And a lot of them, his impact was, shall we say, not so positive. And we pretend that these things didn't happen when people die, and we tend to be dishonest about who and what people were.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, especially in the United States when it comes to presidents. We seem to be just pathologically incapable of realistically assessing the legacy of a president who has just died. I mean, I remember I was in high school yet? I was either in my last year of junior high or my first year of high school when Richard Nixon died. I can't remember. But anyway, I was a teenager, and I remember when Nixon died. And there were glowing tributes to Nixon. Nixon!
The only president who resigned in disgrace to avoid a criminal trial and impeachment.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, I understand you need to take, like, history needs to take a balanced perspective, and Nixon is obviously a significant historical figure, and it's not like we should just not talk about Nixon. But people who would go out of their way to be like, oh, look at all, yes, his presidency ended in scandal, but all the accomplishments and blah, 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 and it's like, yeah, but it's like you seem really eager to rush to his accomplishments, because the dude just died. And I'm sorry, but I mean, Nixon was an asshole. Like, he signed some, he was a good diplomat, and he signed some very important legislation, especially environmental regulations, which like no Republican today would ever do. It's not like everything the guy did was terrible, but on the whole,
he's not Trump.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, on the whole, I think we have to agree he was kind of a shitty president and a shitty person, and fuck him. And yeah, I don't.
He in later years, it was basically admitted that with civil rights was a big thing coming onto the national stage at that point, and they were explicitly stated that Nixon and I don't know how much Kissinger's involved in that, and some of the front people in the administration knew that they couldn't solidly discriminate against black people, but they could do things like trump up a war on drugs that's not really realistic, and have and then you could go after black people for minor drug offenses and put them in prison and do things like that.
Yeah.
Basically, a lot of the policy that he implemented, a lot of the things that his administration spearheaded, was designed to be backdoor racism.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, I mean, the Southern strategy. The Southern strategy was Nixon. And it's like that still happened. Just because he was a competent administrator and he was good dealing with certain aspects of international affairs. And I mean, that's all well and good, but he was also a criminal, and not subtly, like.
Yeah, not particularly apologetic about it either.
No.
I'm kind of proud of it.
And by the same token, with H.W. Bush, I mean, I think most people, even his most ardent detractors, would have to say that he was preferable to Nixon in most ways. And as a president, he was probably preferable to his son, and
yes.
and I would say, even though people might argue with me on this, and also it's not exactly the ideal choice to be making anyway, probably superior to Reagan in a lot of ways. Certainly not as popular and not as charismatic. And also, the amount of damage that he could do was limited because he lost after one term. But, he in many ways, he was not a bad president. And it's very tempting to look at him, especially in light of the person who is president now, and say, oh, those were the glory days. I wish we could have a president like George H.W. Bush again. And we don't realize that our perspective has become so radically skewed by how unthinkably awful the current president is that we're basically willing to accept any alternative. If you said, hey, what about George W. Bush? Could he be president again? Like, there are people who would instinctively just go, yeah, fuck, yes, anything but Trump, yes. And it's like, okay, is a marginal improvement really what we should be clinging to here? Like, of course George W. Bush would be a better president than Donald Trump. That's not the point. Like, a dead person would be a better president than Donald Trump. A vacancy in the office would be a better president than Donald Trump. That's not the point.
Yeah, because nothing would be happening as opposed to actively bad things happening.
Right, exactly.
H.W. Bush, so he basically was sort of carried on the momentum of the Reagan Revolution, such as that was.
Yeah.
which was basically the beginning of the end for America, as it had always been known, and has led to most of the disasters that we face today. But people deify Reagan, even though he would get no closer to the Republican nomination now than Herman Cain did.
Yeah, for sure.
Because he raised taxes, he banned certain types of guns, he did a lot of things that just would not fly today, that would be disqualifying within the Republican Party, which has become as unspeakably awful as the current president, because it's all tied together.
Yeah. And
so H.W. Bush, and there wasn't a whole lot said about this by people who were speaking about him recently, but he carries a lot of the responsibility for some of the military mistakes that were made during the Reagan administration, and for the rather awful response, or rather lack thereof, to the growing AIDS epidemic, which just started and was barely understood, and was basically seen as a gay man's disease, and they basically ignored it until it became a public health crisis that it was shown affected more than just gay people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of things like that Bush was basically complicit in. He's a vice president, never spoke out about these things. He did a lot of he walked hand in hand with Reagan with a lot of the bad things that happened during that administration, and didn't really do much to change that once he became president.
No, absolutely not. And the thing, and I've noticed this the last couple days with the people who are singing the praises of George H.W. Bush. Not all of it, but a great deal of the praise for him and for his presidency, especially from people who disagree with him politically, it's all about his civility and his tone. He was a very civil person. He had a very he spoke with great moderation. He had a level head. He presented a message that, people talk about the 1,000 points of light thing. He wanted to call people to service. He wanted to call people to look out for each other. There's a wonderful quote from him that George W. Bush quoted at the end of his eulogy today, where he talked about, he quoted George H.W. Bush saying, at the end of your life, what will be most important, that you strove for success at all costs, or that you were a person who stopped to ask if a person was okay, or contributed to your community, and you were there for someone who needed help. And that's a lovely thought. That's a really nice sentiment. And it was especially nice that someone said that while fucking Donald Trump was sitting in the front row. And it's almost like he could have gotten down off of the altar and gotten 6 inches from Trump's face, like leaned over with his hands on his legs and said, is it gonna matter that you were such a success in life when you're fucking dead? And all of the destruction you caused to get your success is all that's left of you, you fucking monster. Don't know if George W. Bush is necessarily the best person to deliver that message, but it's a nice message.
Coming from him.
Yeah, it's a nice message, right? And George H.W. Bush, even though he certainly will not go down in history as a great orator or a great writer or rhetorician or whatever, he had some nice sounding ideas, right? And by most accounts, he was personally a very nice guy. And I think
he said, I remember saying he wanted to be known as the literacy president, that he talked about having a goal of 100% literacy within the United States.
Yeah.
And he did make some efforts toward that.
Yeah.
Which try to imagine, Trump doing that.
Ooh. I wish that Trump had been one of the beneficiaries of Bush's literacy project.
Did you ever just spit take there?
Kinda. But yeah, well, I remember he also did the presidential physical fitness thing, where he got Arnold Schwarzenegger in to go to public schools and encourage kids to play sports and be physically active and exercise. He did some good things, Yeah,
and no one's denying that. But don't pretend that's all that he did, because you're talking about how he was a good orator and good public speaker. The thing is, charisma is not a substitute for leadership.
No, especially when your administration exacerbates or ignores some very serious problems in your country, which I think it would be fair to say that the Bush administration, the first Bush administration did.
Yeah, and they actually one of the big decisions that he made during his presidency made things a lot harder for his son during his presidency. I remember when Kuwait was invaded and following some of that live on CNN, and America going in and being involved militarily, and during that the administration had encouraged various not sure what the term is, but the various ideologies and so on, different people in the region, in Kuwait, in Iraq, to rise up against Saddam Hussein and be involved in the fight and so on. And a number of them did. And then as soon as the oil fields of Kuwait were secured, America backed out and basically left the people who they encouraged to rise up to their own devices and to take the brunt of the retribution from Hussein and from leadership over there. So 10, 20 years, it's about 10 years later, 10, 15 years later, September 11th happens, and Bush's son is trying to drum up support over there, and people over there doesn't take a long memory to know that didn't work out so well for them last time, and they were a lot less eager to get involved this time. For arguably a much better reason, but they didn't want to be involved because they know that as soon as the oil was secured, they were hung out to dry and left to their own, and America wasn't really looking out for them. They knew that America was just looking out for itself.
Yeah, well, and you could also tie that in with Bush's former position as the head of the CIA, where he was head of the agency during a time when allegedly the CIA participated in the toppling of legitimate governments in countries around the world for American interest, so they thought. And it's a little difficult once people realize that you have that in your history, that you're willing to rearrange the political map of the entire world through sometimes very nefarious extra legal means to serve the interests of your own country. It doesn't exactly make people trust you and make them want, especially people in nations that are not among the powerful. I mean, the United States and its traditional allies got along well during the Bush presidency because they were never really threatened. Like we're not going to fuck with Britain. You know what I mean? Like, what are we going to do to them? Like but Nicaragua, sorry, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, this whitewashing happened with McCain too, where everyone talked positively about what a maverick he was. It's like, he was never a maverick. Actions speak louder than words, and his words were maverick, but his actions were party line.
Yeah, exactly. And it was the same thing that we're seeing now. It's exactly the same. And the first thought I had, not the first thought, but one of the first thoughts I had when I heard that Bush had died was I thought about there was an interview on Conan O'Brien's show a couple of months ago and he had Dana Carvey on. And this was, I think Bush had taken ill recently. Like, he wasn't, I don't think anybody expected him to die, but he had been in the hospital for something, and this was, as it turned out, it was close to his death anyway, because it was just a few months ago. And they had Dana Carvey on the show, and Conan asked Carvey about Bush, because not only did Dana Carvey do the very famous celebrated impersonation of Bush on Saturday Night Live, but afterwards, as a result of that, he and Bush actually became buddies. Mm-hmm. Because Bush thought it was a funny impression. That's something we can say to his credit, is that he was willing to poke fun at himself,
as opposed to certain other people who are talking about outlawing parody.
Yeah. It's, again, let's not let the low current standard compel us to overrate people in the past simply because they had the very common and human capacity for self-deprecation. Like, it doesn't mean he was like the greatest president ever. It just means that he was capable of being a decent guy. And that's the thing, is like Dana Carvey, they asked, Conan asked him about President Bush, and Carvey was talking about, oh, what a great guy he was, and he was always so gracious and so nice, and he'd been over to his house, and he would call him if because remember, I guess about 10-15 years ago, Dana Carvey had some pretty serious health troubles where he had to get heart surgery, and he said that President Bush called him after that to see if he was all right and see if he needed anything, and it's like, that's really nice, and I'm sure that to his friends and his family and the people he loved and who loved him, he was a great guy. I don't argue that at all. But none of that changes the fact that he was, for 4 years, the most powerful person on the planet. And he did little to nothing about people dying of AIDS. He did little to nothing about homelessness. He ran one of the most infamously racist political ads ever, the Willie Horton ad. Mm. And I'm sorry, none of that is ameliorated by the fact that he was a stand-up guy to his friends. Like, that's nice. And again, that's something he has over Trump, because Trump is apparently an asshole to everybody at every level, has no loyalty, has no sense of personal gratitude or whatever. He's just a bastard who uses people up and discards them and then gets pissed off when they aren't 100% loyal to him. So, Bush had that over him easily. But none of that erases the bad stuff. And I know people say, well, but he just passed away and people need time to mourn. And, like, the fact that you served as president doesn't automatically make you a national hero. He was president. He wasn't a terrible president, but he wasn't a great president, and he did some bad things. And the fact that he was president doesn't mean that he was Lou Gehrig, and that we all have to ignore his personal shortcomings for a few days, and then we can start taking a more a more balanced look. If people right now today are offended and upset by the hero worship of George Bush, and they feel compelled to point out all of the negative shit he did, that is completely their right, and they have no reason to hold their tongues until nobody's paying attention. And then they can start talking. That's not a fair expectation at all.
Right. It's the whole, just because you're good to your close friends doesn't mean that you're a good person. It means that, because a lot of the stuff about being a good person is how you treat people who it doesn't benefit you to treat well.
Right.
And because you're a stand-up guy to your immediate friends and family, well, that's not the same thing as actually being good to other people, to strangers, to people who you aren't going to personally benefit from. That's why when Scalia died, Antonin Scalia,
yeah,
I had done something about is it okay to be like happy that a person has died? Which my position on that was yes, because Scalia, I'm certain, was a good guy to his friends, to his family. To people he was close to. I'm sure that his death is a major loss to his family, his friends. It's a tragedy to them, and I'm not going to argue that. However, in his position on the Supreme Court, he was able to make decisions that affected hundreds of millions of people, and in many cases affected a lot of them very, very negatively, or in some cases with some of the issues of rights and trying to gay rights and minority rights and so on. His decisions could not even all that arguably cost people their lives.
Yeah.
And when a person is making decisions that harm millions and millions of people, he may have been a great guy to his friends and family, but he was still making decisions that were actively harming people. And so I don't feel all that heartbroken. I don't feel it's wrong to be okay with him not being in that position anymore, even if that happens by death. It's not exactly being necessarily directly happy that a person is dead,
right,
but it can be that, and it can be being glad that their death means that they're not going to cause massive widespread harm anymore. And of course, when he died, there's the same thing. You know, he's a great guy. He did this good thing. He did that good thing. And you sort of pretend that the fact that he was making decisions that were racist and bigoted and hurtful to large populations of the American people, you just pretend that didn't happen, which is, I would argue, an unreasonable thing to do.
Yeah, you know, it makes me think of when Strom Thurmond died. And,
oh, geez. He was legend. Not only was he legendarily racist, but reportedly President Lyndon Johnson didn't want his teenage daughters to be alone around Strom Thurmond under the concern that he wasn't ready to be a grandfather yet, which says something about about his habits.
Jesus. Yeah, I hadn't heard that story. But yeah, Strom Thurmond,
of course,
was,
to be fair, Strom Thurmond was only in his like 60s then.
yeah, still virile, and you know, did not observe the half your age plus 7 rule, apparently. And well, but so when Strom Thurmond died,
half your age minus half your age.
Yeah, yeah, or just no. How about that? The rule for Strom Thurmond should have been just don't. I don't care how old
that's
or
a
young.
That's a rule for a lot of people that they don't follow.
Yeah, just don't. You don't need to do any math. You don't need any rule. Just don't. Just stop. Just withdraw from society forever. Thank you. Well, so Strom Thurmond died, you know, what's it been, like fucking 15, 20 years now? But
it's been a while.
It's been a while.
He was in his 90s when he died. I mean,
yeah.
Wasn't he in Congress for like close to 50 years or something like that?
Yeah, he was, because he was a congressman, and then he was a senator. I think he was first elected like in the 40s, maybe. Yeah, he'd been around forever, and he was a segregationist back in the day. And just a racist asshole, just a notoriously racist asshole. And when he died, I think it was Trent Lott, who was a Republican senator at the time, who was the Republican majority leader in the Senate at the time, said he gave a speech at a memorial service for him, where I think it was a memorial service for him, where he said he mentioned that Strom Thurmond had run for president back in the day. And he said, you know, maybe if Strom Thurmond had been elected president, we wouldn't have some of the problems we have today. And of course, there were a lot of people who were outraged that the Republican majority leader would suggest that someone who had run for president as a segregationist would have been a good president and would have stopped us from having, quote unquote, some of the problems we're having today. I wonder what some of those problems would be from the Strom Thurmond position.
All these tolerant people.
Yeah. It's like, so, but Trent Lott's excuse when he offered one after people called him out for that, and he said, what the fuck are you saying? He said, look, I was just trying to say something nice about an old man who had just died. And my like reflexive response to that when I heard that was to ponder the fact that, you know, maybe there are some people about whom nice things just shouldn't be said. No matter what, you know, he was a senator for 50 years. Good for him. He was the president. Good for him. Maybe there are some people, regardless of their accomplishments, regardless of their status, that you just shouldn't say nice things about. Jerry Falwell. Fuck Jerry Falwell.
Richard Spencer?
When Richard Spencer dies, you really think... I mean...
When he dies, they're going to describe him as a leading authority on race relations.
Oh my God. Well, when fucking Trump dies, Trump is going to be an ex-president. And when that motherfucker dies, there are going to be people on major news networks who should know better, who are going to be trying to be tactful and talking about, oh, well, you know, like him or hate him, he really shook things up, and, you know, he kept us on our toes. There was always something interesting. Blah, blah, and they're going to try to put some deranged positive spin on this monster. And because he was the president and because he's dead, we're going to, and
I'm sure that's how the Japanese saw Truman. He certainly kept us on our toes.
Yeah, hey, boy, he gave us a run for our money, boy. You know, Barack Obama's going to give a eulogy where he's going to talk about how great he was. I hope that doesn't happen. Actually, I would love for Obama to roll up and just fucking piss on his grave. That would be, I wish that would happen. But
Considering all the things that Trump is not being invited to, do you think that they're just going to not bother to show up?
I think they should just bury Trump in a pauper's grave like Mozart at the end of Amadeus. I think.
Well, yeah, I agree, but that's not going to happen.
I think someone richer than Trump should take possession of his corpse. Someone who is rich and influential enough to make this happen should take possession of his corpse and just put him in one of those fucking cheap ass pine coffins with the flap on the front. So when they tilt it, the body just falls out. It just slithers out, and they just dump him into a common grave, chuck some lye on him, and do like, there you go. Here lies the 45th president of the United States.
Well, what's more likely to happen is like he'll have Hugh Hefner dug up and have himself buried next to Marilyn Monroe. That's more likely to happen.
Oh my God, that's in his will. That's got to be in his will. You can move Hef to another crypt. I want to be next to Marilyn.
Yeah, it's because he respects the women.
And then the Marilyn Monroe estate will have her moved somewhere else. They'll be like, oh no, fuck this.
Boy, that'd be a great way to respond to Hefner, wouldn't it?
It's we're gonna move the grave. We're gonna move the grave.
Yeah, Hefner's another person. When he died, they just pretended that he was a great guy when he really wasn't.
Yeah,
but you know what? All of this whitewashing is a good term because it only applies to white people. I've covered recently when a black person is shot by police for using a cell phone in their own yard, or a black person in their apartment and a white police officer breaks in and then shoots and kills them, and commits murder. It's open season on them. They dig up everything they can. They talk about possible crimes. They suggest that they were using drugs. They were always using drugs.
Oh,
every one of them. And every victim of violence, every black victim was a drug user. And then they'll pull up like the speeding tickets they got 15 years ago to try to pretend that they're a monster who deserve what they got. But once it's a white person who was upper class, suddenly they're deified and they did no wrong.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
it's absurd.
Because we've been taught for so long to worship success and to think that success as an end unto itself is always praiseworthy, no matter what you succeed at doing. I mean,
of course, don't we have people who are have so much money they're launching cars into space because they say they don't know what else to do with their money, even though their workers are on public assistance?
I know, right? You could
not to mention any specific incident, just that general mindset. Well, I'm so rich that I'm going to do stuff like this. It's like, well, maybe your success is coming from other people who maybe you should treat a little bit better.
Yeah,
everyone thinks they did it themselves.
I think I've mentioned this before, but I'm reminded of it because I just saw my dad on Thanksgiving, and my dad is not. My dad and I don't talk politics very much. He's more conservative than I am, but he's not like an arch, like super conservative, but he's a lot more conservative than I am politically. And, but even he is like just horribly outraged at, like how much money Jeff Bezos has and how poorly treated Amazon employees are. And, we were talking about how, Bezos said, because Bezos, like Elon Musk, is like investing in this private space company, and he wants to send a mission to Mars, and he wants to do all this, amazing space exploration stuff that NASA should be doing. I mean, he should just give the money to NASA. He should just make a donation to NASA if he really wants to help the space program.
Yeah, they've already got a lot of the foundations laid for this sort of stuff. They have the equipment.
Yeah,
they've done this before. They have some experience.
Yeah, just that's all you multi billionaires out there, because I know you watch. If you really want to help build a new bright future for humanity in space, just take whatever you were going to invest in your bullshit private space company and just give it to NASA and let them do it, But anyway, and Bezos is doing the space thing. And somebody asked Bezos in an interview earlier this year or last year, why this? Like, why are you investing in this project among whatever else you could use your money on? And Jeff Bezos said, well, because it's the only thing I could imagine that is big enough for all the money I have. And I thought, you could just pay people. I mean, if you have so much money and you're saying, let's do a mission to Mars because it's the only project big enough for all the money I have. I mean, you don't have to spend it all in one place, you know. You could take a tiny percentage of it and pay the people that work for you that allow you to have the money in the first place.
Or you could, do something here at home, like, the whole climate change issue.
You could.
You put a little bit of work and money toward that and trying to make certain that there is a world for your grandchildren to inherit.
You could. You could.
Didn't ContraPoints just do a video on that?
Yes, and it was excellent. It was excellent. I thought it was a really good video because there was a ton of like heavy lifting in terms of information in that video, but she still managed to make it very watchable and very sort of accessible. So yes.
I've watched that one. It can be tough to pour a lot of factual information, a lot of statistics out, and at the same time not just go into like pure lecture boring mode.
Yeah, well, I thought it was a clever device to have the doctor character keep having to prod the other character to keep watching the video. Because the other character kept saying, "This is boring. This is pointless. Why should I care about this?" And she had to keep going, like, "Just watch the video."
Yeah, I like the. Don't you even care? No. All the things you can do, and it's just like, no. That's it in a nutshell, really.
Yeah, because it's accurate, and I mean, you can say that about climate change, and that's the worst one because that's going to kill everybody eventually. But it's we have the same problem here in the U.S. with gun violence. It's like the problem seems so big and so insurmountable that even some people who you can get to acknowledge that it's bad, you can't really motivate them to do anything because they figure, yeah, but why should I care? It is what it is, or they think, well, it's never going to hurt me. So, yeah. I mean, why should I care?
The question is, who close to you would have to die from gun violence before you'd start caring about the issue and do something about it?
Right.
That is the blunt question.
Who that you love would have to drown in like a climate change related flood in order for you to care about climate change?
Because I see stuff online where people complain about the approach of making it personal. It's like, women's rights. Well, what if your wife or your daughter? And they're like, that's terrible. You don't want to. You shouldn't care about women's rights just because it's a family member. And on one hand, I do agree with that. But on the other hand, some people simply don't care unless it applies to someone they care about. If it's a faithless mass, the millions of people, they don't care. But if it's suddenly somebody they care about, that puts in a perspective they can appreciate and approach the issue with some understanding. So I understand why you don't want to say why there's a resistance to using that as an approach to get people to care, but in some cases it's the only effective way to do it. Yeah, and that's terrible, but it is it is the way it is.
There is, I mean, I am of two minds about it because I see both sides and think both sides of that are completely valid. Like, there is a principled part of me that is like, you shouldn't have to have a personal connection to it. If it's dangerous, if it's harmful, if people are suffering or people are threatened by it, you should care about it whether you feel personally touched by it or not. What kind of a fucking sociopath are you? Like, why isn't this more important to you? But then there is also that pragmatic side that is like, yeah, but I mean, anything that can get more people to care about it is good. And I mean, so yeah, it's tough because I am definitely of the mind of, the world would be a much better place if you didn't have to convince people that they had personal stake in every fucking social problem, that they should care about it just because it's wrong. Like, it doesn't matter if you have a trans person in your family or not. You should care about trans people being mistreated because it's fucking wrong. It doesn't matter if you've ever had someone killed by gun violence or not. You should care about it because it's fucking wrong.
And because it doesn't cost you anything to care.
Right.
Trans rights, I mean, people are burning all sorts of energy to be against them. It's like, just ignore the issue and it doesn't affect you. You're burning... I mean, if it doesn't cost you anything to not actively hate people.
Yeah.
It doesn't cost you anything to not actively harm them. You're making a conscious decision to try to make life worse for other people.
Yeah.
You would accomplish more and make the world a better place by not doing a goddamn thing.
Exactly. Just keep your mouth shut. You know, stop trying to ruin other people's lives for no reason. And, you know, if you do happen to encounter a trans person in your everyday life, just be a decent human being and just be nice to them. And that's it. That's all we really need from you. You know, if again, like the social workers and the activists and the politicians who don't want to fuck people for its own sake, who want to actually try to help people and promote positive change, like they could probably accomplish a lot more if transphobic assholes were not constantly, you know, trying to stand in their way. So just go home, sit down, shut up, disengage. Spend your time on doing whatever the fuck you care about, watching Andy Griffith reruns or whatever the fuck it is. I don't care. Just, you know, I shouldn't defame Andy Griffith because the Andy Griffith Show was an excellent program. But I'm just saying, go do whatever, watch Me TV, whatever makes you happy, and let people, you know, try to do some good in the world instead of trying to constantly trip them up. I don't know.
Yeah, we got a little off topic there, but it's still a good topic.
Fuck George H.W. Bush.
But people don't. It's tailoring the message to the audience. I guess when you're at the. I mean, I can understand when you're at the service, you don't want to stand up there and say how many people in the Middle East are dead because of him.
Right.
You know, how
not
many
the
governments
room.
did this guy overthrow?
Yeah.
But you know, if you're the news, you know, American news is kind of garbage. But you sort of have a responsibility to acknowledge the pluses and the minuses of a person's life.
Yeah.
I mean, that's. The news agency don't have to tailor their message the way that you do in other places.
That is a really good point. That is a really good point. And that kind of that states it very clearly. Like, it's if you're giving a eulogy at the guy's funeral, okay, mention the good stuff and leave out the bad stuff. Because you don't want to, you know, you want to spare the feelings of people in the room. Hell, if you were invited to the eulogy to give a eulogy, you probably think he's pretty great anyway. So just, yeah. But if you're a journalist, you're not writing his fucking obituary. You're not writing his eulogy. It's not your job to memorialize him. Like, stop, you know, cheerleading for the guy. That's not your job. In fact, your job is the exact opposite of that. You know, you're supposed to be pointing out all the bad things he did. And you don't have to do only that, but if everybody else is singing his praises, you know, maybe mention the harm that he caused. I mean, maybe.
No, but you know how it works. Once a person dies, everything they did was good, and the bad is all caused by millennials killing industries by not spending money on things.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
That's where the blame goes. The blame goes to people who are dead are beyond reproach. The problem is all younger people who aren't doing what you want them to do, even though you've taken away their ability to do it.
Let me tell you something. When George H.W. Bush was president, they didn't, you know, the American cheese industry was doing just fine. That's the latest thing I saw. I saw millennials are killing American cheese because I guess we should blame young people for wanting to put good cheese on shit.
I seem to remember posting, I saw that a little while ago. I posted an image because underneath it was a picture of meat. And I'm like, that is not cheese.
That is not cheese, sir. Maybe that's why, because nobody knows what American cheese is. They think it's meat. Like, no, that's meat. That's...
I like the thing that said that all the articles I've read about millennials are killing whatever industry basically boils down to millennials are making sound financial decisions given their current status.
Yeah. I mean, what isn't that the free market? If millennials aren't buying shit, should we really be alarmed about it, or should we just say, hey, it's the wisdom of the free market. The market has spoken.
But the free market is killing things that I like.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, so it's not the free market that you care about. It's whatever your bullshit is. Like, I can relate to that. I care about my bullshit too, but you know what? If the next generation coming up doesn't care about my bullshit and my bullshit goes away, c'est la vie. That's just, you know.
was the generation before millennials that killed the manual typewriter industry.
God damn it! Now we have these fucking computers.
Didn't they say near the end of his, like, I say near the end, was probably like the last 30 years of his life, Harlan Ellison, who did all his writing on a manual typewriter, had to learn how to repair the things himself because nobody else was doing it anymore.
Oh man, if you could have been a fly on the wall for some of those repair sessions, wouldn't that? Oh, the profanity that must have come out of that man's mouth. Oh, because he would cuss you out if he was happy to see you. Like,
yeah. I think my favorite comment on his death was David Drold saying, I don't think Harlan's going to heaven or hell. He's going to make his own place.
Right. He's not going to want to hang out with any of those people.
Yeah, but he...
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. And I don't know that people necessarily whitewashed him because they described him as a Star Trek author, which he wrote one story for Star Trek, and they talked about how temperamental he was. So he didn't necessarily get whitewashed the way that other people have been.
No, well, I think part of it, what helped Ellison in that regard was that he was well known and he was well respected by people who knew him, and knew his work, and within like the science fiction fantasy genre, he was obviously a giant, but he wasn't like, he was never like Ray Bradbury. He was never like this sort of universally known.
He was never a household
icon.
name.
Yeah. And which is a shame because I would have loved. I mean, I would have rather have someone like Ellison, for all of his problems, be like the sci-fi writer emeritus than Ray Bradbury, who is like I nothing against Ray Bradbury. I like a lot of Ray Bradbury's writing, but it's like, God, will you just shut the fuck up about the 30s? Like, I get it. You had a nice childhood. I get it. Just Jesus, Ray.
I remember it was years and years ago, I finally got around to reading probably the story that he's arguably best known for, Fahrenheit 451.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And for how much it had been built up, I was actually very disappointed in it.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe it was that it had been built up, but I was expecting a lot more from it, just from, certain things attain legendary status, and then the reality can't live up to what what the legend is. But I don't know. I read it and I'm like, okay, I'm not. Maybe I need to read it again, but I didn't get a whole lot out of it. I wasn't as blown away by it as I was expecting to be.
Yeah, that happens sometimes. Yeah, that's how that was my first reaction when I watched Monty Python and the Holy Grail for the first time. I was underwhelmed by it, because people had told me, like 2 or 3 people independently had told me, and this is like I first watched it back when I was like a teenager, but like 2 or 3 people had told me independently, like it's like the funniest movie ever made. So I thought, well, shit, I've got to see this. So I rented it and I watched it, and I liked it, but I felt underwhelmed because it wasn't the funniest movie I'd ever seen. And then. Well, and
it was oversold.
Yeah. Well, and then so I never really watched it again. But then, like years later, I watched it again after having ignored it for so many years, and it killed me. Like it was, I still wouldn't count it like the funniest movie I've ever seen, but it was so much funnier to me than it had been originally. And I'm not sure if it was just you
went in without the expectations.
Yeah, maybe.
Not expecting it and not counting on it to be the funniest thing ever, and so you're able to enjoy it more for what it was rather than what you expected it to be.
Probably.
I have that problem a lot with music. When I buy a new CD or something new by the band, usually I have to listen to it a couple of times before I can start to appreciate it because it's new and it's different and it's not what I expected, and so I have to learn to approach it on its terms rather than what I expect it to be.
Yeah, I have that same experience a lot too. Yeah, I remember. It was the one of the second or third most recent Modest Mouse albums. I forget which one it was. I think it might have been. It was We Were Dead Before the Ship Even Sank, which I got as soon as it came out because I was a big Modest Mouse fan by that point, and
it was kind of different in tone than what came before, wasn't it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. It was. Yeah. It was. You could still tell it was them, but it was a little bit of a departure. And I listened to it you know, as soon as I got it, and I liked it. Like, it wasn't like I didn't like it at first, but it took me about 3 or 4 times listening through it. And now it's like one of my favorite albums ever. Now it's like I wouldn't want to do without it. But yeah, it's like, yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely my favorite by them, although I think it's probably the reason my wife really doesn't like them at all.
Oh, really?
Because other things that I've played by them, she's kind of liked it, you know, but Modest Mouse is sort of our go-to. I joke, you know, that's if I'm going to joke about playing something she doesn't like, it's Modest Mouse. And I think it's mostly that album, because some of the other stuff that I've played at other times that hasn't been that album, and it's been a bit less discordant, she actually kind of likes. But that is an album that in many places is kind of discordant and loud and bombastic.
Yeah.
And, in a way that she doesn't necessarily appreciate. I must say, I think we've gotten off our topic. Are we done talking about Whitewashing? Because we're talking about Ray Bradbury and Modest Mouse now, and I don't think that's where we started.
I don't know. How many conversations can you have where you go from Ray Bradbury to Modest Mouse in the space of, you know, and Harlan Ellison, you know?
Well, Ray Bradbury to Harlan Ellison isn't too hard.
That's not a stretch, yeah.
So are we? I always end up asking this. Have we reached the limit of what we're talking about for our scheduled topic?
I think we probably have. I mean, you know, it happens every time someone famous dies, and it doesn't matter like how shitty they turned out to be. If they were ever famous for anything good at any point, once they're dead,
we pretend their shit was penicillin and ice cream.
Yeah, exactly. Just wait, and when fucking Bill Cosby dies, just wait, it's coming. You know, it's gonna
great knowledgeable family man.
Oh God, the TV pioneer, the guy who rescued the sitcom in the '80s. You know, like it's one of the most influential stand-up comedians ever. All of which is true, but it's like, should we really be leading with that? Like, can't we? I mean,
the fantastic Cosby.
Yeah, it's like you know what? D.W. Griffith was a great filmmaker, but he also made Birth of a Nation. Like, I feel like we really need to temper our enthusiasm. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I think we're done.
All right. So then, does that lead us into the 5 minutes of Trump?
Yeah. You want to do 5 minutes of Trump? Jesus, let's do it.
You always ask me if I want to, and the answer is always no, but I will anyway, because that's kind of the standard.
I'll do it, okay? Yeah. Oh boy.
I don't want to do it.
It'd be more accurate for me to say I don't want to have to do it.
Yeah, I didn't want to clean the bathroom and unclog the drain, but you know, I did. It's a thing that needs to be done.
It was necessary. I took no joy in it.
Exactly.
It was necessary.
I was thrilled when it was done. But this is how this works.
Exactly. Okay, let me start the timer, and for 5 minutes we will talk about our just unimaginably shitty current president. Okay, so he was the only person at the George H.W. Bush funeral to not recite the Apostles' Creed, even though he had it on a paper that he held in his hand. And he was also the only person not to have his hand over his heart at the end. I don't personally care about either of those gestures. I just think it's interesting that the guy who is completely unswervingly supported by the religious right in this country was the most blatantly disrespectful of all the religious shit at the service, and none of those motherfuckers are going to say boo about it.
Yeah, but Obama nearly got, metaphorically crucified for not wearing a flag pin lapel.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
On his lapel.
Yeah, and for going to a church that was pastored by a guy who said "Goddamn America" during a sermon that was about slavery and segregation and Jim Crow. Like
Obama was still Muslim.
Oh, that's right.
Even though he attended these services with this guy for 20 years,
he was still Muslim. he went to a Christian church for like his whole fucking adult life. But he's a super secret Muslim.
Of course, Trump also lost his way during the national anthem one time. Apparently, doesn't know the words to the national anthem, which, if Obama stumbled over that, or any Democrat really stumbled over that, that would be something that Fox News would play approximately daily until they died. and then would continue to play after that because they wouldn't whitewash him because they're a Democrat.
Yeah.
But Obama gets so much crap for such nothing issues, but Trump, because he's white and he's a Republican, gets a free pass on just about any appalling thing you can imagine.
Oh yeah,
the double standard is just staggering.
Speaking of the national anthem, did you see? I think it was yesterday when Bush's coffin was being taken through the street, and a parade. People weren't like dragging it. Like it's not like people grabbed his coffin and were like, "Fuck this guy," and dragging him through the street.
Got an Oldsmobile station wagon and tied a rope to the back, and I was just bouncing along the road.
There's your president, you goddamn. No, it was like they were. I think it was when they were taking it to the Capitol Rotunda. But anyway, there was like an official function where the casket was being moved, and the Bushes were there, and the Trump was there, and the cabinet secretaries were there, and they were playing the national anthem, and everybody was standing there very solemnly and was sort of looking down and looked very, appropriately somber, except for fucking Trump, who was standing there singing along to the national anthem like he was at a fucking baseball game. And I wonder what happens in his fucking mind where he's like, I remember people giving me shit because I don't know the lyrics to the national anthem. This would be the perfect opportunity to prove that I know the words.
That's actually exactly what I was thinking when you just described that. That's probably the thought process.
And
I know this one.
Yeah, it's like he has no sense of what is appropriate. Like ever. You're like, dude, just shut up. Just sit. Can you just stand still and just look like you give a shit about something for like 30 seconds? That's all we need from you.
Absolutely no sense of context on anything.
No, not at all. And no sense of anything other than himself and his immediate needs. Like, I think that's probably the most accurate description of Trump that I've ever heard anybody say. It might have been the guy who wrote The Art of the Deal who said that. Yeah. Who said, because that was like the impression of Trump that he got when he was with him researching that book. He was a person who just has no sense and no care about anything other than his own immediate needs. Yeah.
I must say, I'm glad that we're actually hearing a little bit from Robert Mueller again. I think he was being very quiet up to the election because he's not somebody who's going to try to skew an election the way things happened, right near the last presidential election. But I think that he's sort of not necessarily riding the brake, but he's making some noise again. But I think he's trying to stay kind of quiet. Now the election is over, he's making a little bit more noise. We're hearing from him. But I think that he's not actually going to take any next huge steps until after the next Congress is sworn in. I have the feeling that he's waiting for that before he does anything else.
That would be smart. That would be smart. Yeah. Because, you can see what's happening in Wisconsin. You can see how spiteful lame duck Republican Congresses can be.
That was incredible. I just read about that earlier. They're actually, now that Republican isn't governor, they're changing the rules to restrict the power of the governor.
Yeah, exactly. It's a lame duck session. Like there's a new governor coming in. There's a new Secretary of State, a new Attorney General. And they're basically cuffing the powers of those offices and instituting a whole bunch of new things. Like
it could not be more brazen and more blatant and more obvious what they're doing. They're not even trying to pretend that there's any semblance of anything other than partisan politics to this.
Yeah. And
there's not even a pretense anymore.
No, and yet, speaking of the double standard, when President Obama decided that they weren't going to deport children who had come undocumented to this country, as babies, that was an unacceptable abuse of executive power. Right? That was, it's a power grab. But a lame duck Republican state legislature doing everything it can to fuck the Democrats before they get into office. That's okay. No, there's not a Republican in the country that is going to say boo about that. But, the Democrats, oh boy,
That's why, like I said, as big of a problem as Trump is, he's more a symptom.
Yeah.
Because he couldn't, Trump by himself is nothing. Absolutely nothing. And in a way, he still is nothing, and that's something that is going to haunt him to his grave. But the problem for the country is all the people who support him.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. A gangster.
I know our 5 minutes of Trump is over, so I apologize for that.
That is an unauthorized Trump comment. Yeah, it's
for shame. I'll go now.
Yeah, I'll do the show by myself because I don't have enough of those on my channel. Oh, good, you're back.
You don't just have the ones with yourself. You also have the ones with the stuffed animals.
That's true. Those are definitely not just me.
Yeah, because Ashley does some of the voices.
Ashley does the voices for like 4 of the characters. Yeah, so it's not just me. It's like I'll occasionally get comments from people who are attempting to insult me by saying like there are 2 genres of the attempted insults on Steve and Stuffy videos. One of them is from the perspective of they think that it's real. And they think, or they'll say things like, oh, this is just pathetic. He just hangs out with stuffed animals all day. Like, okay, I'm not sure how to take that because, like, it's a bit. Like, it's a bit. It's a bit, right? That's like it's constructed. You don't have to like it, but like insulting me as though that's a portrait of my actual life is just weird. Then
it's like the person who ventriloquists don't have the dummy on their head all the time.
Oh, look at him talking to that dummy like it's a real person. That's fucking pathetic. Okay. And then the other one is, they say, I think it's really sad that you have no friends and you can't get anyone to collaborate with you. So you have to make videos where you talk to stuffed animals, which is also funny because my wife does the voices for half of the cast.
And you can get away with you have a lot more freedom, and you can do a lot more with the stuffed animals than you can with actual people who not only have their own lives, but even overlooking that. If you can get 5 other people in your own, in your house at the same time to do these videos, all this stuff about burning down bars and the whole thing that was the breakup with I forget the name of the game with that Wilhelmina.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I mean, you couldn't do that with humans.
Sourball,
that doesn't work.
Yeah, no. Do you think I could find a good actor who would play Jack McPherson and would not would not justifiably have a lot of problems with that character? I mean, so he's kind of an Irish stereotype. He's an alcoholic. He's explosively violent. He's an arsonist, and apparently at some point also a murderer. I mean, at least he refers to crimes that certainly sound like they're pretty close to murder.
And you know what? You could probably find somebody who would be happy to go along with all of that, but then would have objected to the pegging line a couple episodes ago.
Oh yeah, and also he's well, I don't know what his sexuality is. He's not straight. He is Toby Benson. Toby Benson, I know, is a voracious omnisexual. He will potentially have sex with anyone who wants to have sex with him. I don't know
the Jack Harkness sexuality.
Exactly, Jack. Exactly. I get that reference, even though I haven't seen any of those episodes. Actually, no, I've seen the first Jack Harkness episode. Yeah.
Yeah, you saw the you saw the first season, so you've seen a lot. You haven't watched any Torchwood. And
no, I haven't.
Jack will show up again if you do continue watching the show, which I'm still hoping you do.
if I ever get back to it,
please do.
I want to. I seriously do. I seriously want to. But keep in mind, I still haven't seen every episode of Firefly.
Yeah, well,
and I have it on DVD. I mean, like, I got it as a Christmas present on DVD. My sister-in-law got it for me like 10 years ago on DVD, and I was like, oh, cool. I watched the first disc, and I was like, this is great. Haven't watched it since. So.
Yeah, Doctor Who, this most recent season has had a bit more of an obvious social conscience than it has in previous years, which is fine because a new Doctor and a new creative crew, and with the world and the state it's in, I don't really have a problem with doing some more explicitly political things.
No,
I was struck by one this season because it's something that I guess we don't know as much about in America, but the partitioning of India, when England basically just divided up India and said this part's Pakistan and this part's this, and just basically made the decision for the people who live there. And it occurred to me watching the episode that the show was kind of understandably at this point presenting it as a bad thing, which I think looking back most people objectively would say it was. But also it occurred to me this only occurred like 15 years before the show originally premiered, 10, 15 years before. This is an episode that never would have made it to air when the show premiered.
Oh, no, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
Even with the historical bent that it was supposed to have in some of the earlier episodes, the concept that they would go through actual historical events, they weren't going to do a historical event that was very critical of people who were still in power at that point.
Right. And were, paying the bills.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. It is,
but I mean, so it has done some more political stuff. In fact, one of the more recent episodes, anyway, was called Kerblam with an exclamation point, which is basically a send-up of Amazon.
Oh, wow. Well, that's great.
It actually, there's quotas that you have to have a certain % of the workforce actually be biological organisms and not robots.
They have to force them to hire human beings.
Yeah, basically,
that's
because
hilarious.
robots are cheaper.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, and they put a tracking collar on the human employees' ankles so they can track them, which Amazon actually does have. Some places they talk about, they put like wristbands on them so they can track what they're doing and how much work and where they are. It's
to build that atmosphere of trust that is so important in any workplace.
Yeah.
Like, instead of just treating you well and paying you and making you feel needed and necessary and respected, we're going to put tracking collars on you.
Right.
We're gonna force you to do your job well instead of creating an environment where you'll want to do it well, because that'll probably be the best thing to do for everybody. It sounds like, actually, it reminds me of what I've said about Star Trek, which is I like it incredibly political and preachy. Like, that's my favorite version of Star Trek, when it's just like when it has a positive message and it just beats you in the face with it, so you can't possibly miss the point. So then when you meet someone who does miss the point, you know that you can just avoid that person for the rest of your life.
Because they're completely clueless. Like, all these people are like, Star Trek isn't political. It's like, have you watched this show?
Which Star Trek? Like, is there another Star Trek? Is it like there's two Ghostbusters and one of them is like really different? Is there like another version of Star Trek? Yeah, I don't get that either. I mean, of all the shows, like... It's like the most shamelessly, blatantly political show ever. I mean, they had half white, half black people. How is that?
Half black, half white.
Half black, half white. I mean, come on. Like, how do you miss that? How do you watch that episode? Or how do you not get that in the 60s, the Klingons are supposed to be the Soviets? Like, they do everything but tell you. They do everything but have Spock spike the camera and go, they're just like the Russians.
Yeah.
Like
the Klingon Empire, like the Enterprise had the little insignia on the chest, a little like A type symbol. The Klingons had the hammer and sickle,
Yeah, exactly. I wonder what they're trying to say. I don't know. Some people just
like the Doomsday Machine, where they end by talking like they explicitly reference the hydrogen bomb, the weapon that was never meant to be used. Very subtle, very subtle.
I mean, yeah, they even in episodes that aren't super political, there are often lines or references, like in Star Trek First Contact, when Data says, oh, it's ironic that Dr. Cochrane chose to use a reclaimed nuclear missile to inaugurate an era of peace. It's like, yeah, no shit. Thanks, Star Trek. Good point. Like it's not that movie generally is not one of the more political stories, but it's always there,
And the TV shows are like Star Trek is people of the era it was recorded in put into a different setting, which is why the very last episode of the original show, Turnabout Intruder, references women just now being accepted into command school in the 23rd century. You know, and it's like, as far as being political, it's like, ooh, nice try. You know, I know that you were trying to do well there, but ouch.
So in 300 years, we haven't achieved gender equality.
We haven't. Not only have we not achieved gender equality, but they finally got around to, you know what? Maybe we can put women in command.
Yeah.
Which is the sort of thing that they rightfully ignored when Discovery came along, and they put a woman in command.
Yeah, they're like, yeah, fuck this. That was a terrible idea.
And of course, you know, all these purists are saying it's not the original show because it looks different. Well, you know, you're kind of contradicting one of the more blatantly appalling mistakes of the original show.
Yeah.
And you don't. Well, people didn't have as much of a problem about it. Some people still did, but you know, screw those people because they're garbage.
You know, yeah, fuck them.
If a non-white woman in command of a starship on a TV show gets you up in arms and screaming about white genocide, odds are you are garbage, and nobody should be listening to anything you're saying.
And you're watching the wrong show. You're just watching the wrong show.
Can we have a non-progressive Star Trek?
Like, no. No, I'm sorry, you can't. That's that's the whole point. I mean, fucking Roddenberry said that, and I'm not like, you know, I have my problems with Roddenberry.
Talk about speaking no ill of the dead. How about Harlan Ellison and Gene Roddenberry?
Oh my God, yeah, boy.
Because he screwed me over one last time by dying.
Yeah, as Ellison did not observe that custom. He was like, yeah, fuck him. He was an asshole to me. But yeah, like Roddenberry himself on multiple occasions said that was part of the point of the show. Like that, all of the political stuff, all of the stuff with the diversity of the crew. Like, I guess people think that just happened by accident. Like I get comments from people on my Star Trek videos where they're like, well, I liked it better, you know, in the older shows when they weren't beating you over the head with it. When was this? Like, do you think they cast George Takei by accident? He was, I mean, they intentionally cast a black woman and an Asian man. They intentionally made Chekhov a Russian character, even though the actor wasn't Russian. Like, this was by design. That was part of the point of the show. It didn't just happen to turn out that way. Like,
and then along comes the Next Generation, and they have stories like The Measure of a Man, with Data on trial, and then Justice, which was just a terrible First Contact episode in the first season, but they come out and just to say, since when has Justice been as simple as a rule book? You know, they're not being subtle.
No, you know, there was a quote from Leonard Nimoy that I only saw just recently, but that comes from an interview he gave in 2009 when the first J.J. Abrams movie came out. And I guess he was asked about, you know, what does he think about people who would object to the new movies because they're different from the classic show, and questions of canon, and, you know, what does this mean for Star Trek canon, and et cetera, et cetera. And Nimoy said, instead of asking if something is canon, it's much better and more interesting to ask, what does Star Trek want to tell me now? You know, where does Star Trek want to take me? Instead of worrying about, is this canon, does this contradict something else, just engage with the show on its own terms. And if you're a fan of it, you know, start at that point and say, okay, what is this trying to do? And if I like it, then it's good. You know, if I don't like it,
tell good stories. Tell good stories.
Exactly.
Don't get bent out of shape over the details of a throwaway line in an episode that was recorded 52 years ago, and say, well, this is different, so I can't accept it. You know, tell the good stories and go with it. I mean, you know, if they do, they're not going to do anything completely insane, like say that Klingons evolved on Earth as well and have been here all along. You know, but
right.
You know, as long as they don't, you know, jump that sort of cross that sort of bridge, you're just go. Are the stories good?
Yeah. Well, it's like,
are they entertaining?
It's like I mentioned.
That's for all shows. Doctor Who too. I mean, Doctor Who has produced more televised material than just about any show that's not a news broadcast.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
and it's not all going to hold together, and you just have to live with that. Doctor Who, of course, the time travel show, that has a perfect explanation. Time's always being rewritten. It was true then, it's not now. But
yeah,
any show, just don't get so caught up in the details that you lose track of what's going on now. MASH in later seasons had stories about Hawkeye talking about his father growing up alone, and his father in one episode ended up not pursuing a relationship because Hawkeye was a kid and he didn't approve, and so his father didn't, ended up breaking up with her. And says to this day he's alone. In an earlier episode, he was writing a letter home and he said, "Say hi to mom and sis for me."
Right.
Yeah, you just sort of look the other way on that. You're telling a good story now. You don't let a throwaway line seasons earlier screw that up.
Yeah, and if your suspension of disbelief is so brittle that you'll having it, sort of poked like that will throw you out of an otherwise good show. Again, it's like maybe this TV thing isn't for you. Maybe this fiction thing just isn't for you. Maybe you should just stick with documentaries because you
should watch Big Bang Theory, which pretends to be for smart people.
You'll probably think it's hilarious. Hasn't
that show been on the air for like? Oh, God. Didn't that show premiere like during the Eisenhower administration?
There's something about shows on CBS that they run forever, and I don't know anybody who watches them. I mean, Big Bang Theory I think has been on like 12 years. I don't know a single person who watches it. Yeah,
didn't 2.5 Men go for like 14 years or 13 years or something insane?
It was, I don't know if it was quite that long, but it was like 8 or 9 maybe. I mean,
it was double digits.
Was it double digit? Okay,
I would look it up. I would look it up and get the exact number, but I just don't give it. But shows it just. I remember when I read that Bones was being canceled, and I'm like, Bones is still on the air?
Bones is still on? Yeah, I read that too, because I watched Bones for like the first 2 seasons and then just kind of just fell away from it. And then, like 10 years later, I was like, what? Like, they're still making that? It's ridiculous. But,
and of course, that's harder here in America where seasons are like, 20 episodes. Or they used to be 26 and they're 24. Now they're usually at least 20. I like the one thing I saw on Facebook where it was just captions. I don't know if it was from an actual show or somebody just put captions on the photo. It says, "You've never heard of that show? It ran for 16 seasons on the BBC. They did nearly 30 episodes."
Right, exactly.
The BBC does like 10 and 12 and sometimes 3 episode seasons, and then they don't do another season for like 3 years.
Yeah, it's a lot more like doing a sequel to a movie. Where they'll do a season, and if it's well received, in a year or 2 they'll get back together and do another one. That's why it doesn't really worry me the amount of Star Trek that they have in production now, because I got a comment the other day from someone who was like, are you concerned? I think it was during my live stream, during my Ask Away live stream. They said, are you worried about because now they're still doing Discovery, they're doing the new Picard show, they're doing this animated series, they're talking about giving Captain Georgiou her own show.
I hadn't heard some of that. I don't think I'd heard that.
Yeah, the animated one they're definitely doing. It's like an animated. It's gotta
be better than the last animated one.
Well, it's an animated comedy, so we'll see. Star Trek hasn't.
Is this like one of those below decks type things?
Yes.
Or something?
Yes.
I did hear about that. Yes.
And Star Trek hasn't always been great at intentional comedy, so we'll see. But yes.
But iMud was so subtle.
But so they're definitely doing that. The Captain Georgiou show hasn't actually officially been greenlit yet, but it's just like something that's been proposed that they're considering. And so that's like a lot of Star Trek. That's more Star Trek TV that's ever been in production at the same time than ever before.
No, it's not. No, it's not. Because at one point, they had in one calendar year, The Next Generation ended, Deep Space Nine was on the air,
and
Voyager debuted, and they released the movie Generations in the same calendar year.
They were
3 shows in a movie.
They were ramping up Voyager at the same time. Yeah, you're right. I guess you're right.
Well, I guess technically Voyager might not have premiered until January.
Yeah.
But still, within a 24-month span, they had 3 TV series and a movie in production.
Yeah. So, and those were like traditional, like American 25 episode TV seasons. The thing that makes me not concerned about this situation is, Discovery's new season coming up is going to be 13 episodes. I presume the Picard show will be similar to that. It may be even shorter. Who knows? I don't even know if they might even do,
It might not be honestly, it might not be a bad thing if it's shorter, because I have the feeling that as good as a Picard series hopefully will be, it may very much fall into the category of less is more. I don't think that a 22 episode season would work.
No, and I don't know if I necessarily want to see that.
And I'm not sure a 13 episode season, maybe. But, I could see them doing something shorter with that.
Oh, I agree.
I wouldn't necessarily have a problem with that.
I would rather have 6 good episodes than 13 kind of okay ones.
Yeah. Well, we'll still have the 6 good episode, but we'll put 7 filler in.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I mean, and I imagine like a Captain Giorgio show would be the same. Like the current model of really, and they're going to release them one at a time. So it's not like they're going to have there's going to be Discovery, and then the next day there's going to be a Picard episode, and then the next, what I mean? It's not like when Deep Space Nine and Voyager were both on at the same time. It's like, God damn it, there's a lot of Star Trek to watch. Now it's like, okay, we'll do Discovery from January to April. We'll do the Picard show in the fall. It's not all hitting you at once. So. And
they're not going to have to do all these filler episodes where they're trying to aim for sweeps. So you have your episodes where things happen, and then you have the filler episodes until you get to sweeps to try to draw people in. So they're going to have this episode. Picard tends the vineyard a bit.
Time for a Geordi episode. Poor Geordi.
They never put those out on sweeps.
No. Time for a Harry Kim episode.
Oh, talk about a cipher. 7 years and you basically learned almost nothing about him.
Well, he was
replaced. As you pointed out, Paris, who had all sorts of interests that only for one episode at a time.
Yeah. Paris was like the most accomplished and efficient Starfleet officer ever, and it made no difference because like his skills only mattered for one episode, and then they were never mentioned again.
Like the Chet Morton from the original Hardy Boys novels, where whatever Chet's hobby was for that particular book was going to be very important to figure out what was going on. And then he would never have that hobby again.
Whatever happened to... Well, at least when they decided to make Picard an archaeology nerd, they at least did revisit that a couple times. Because I remember when I was, Ashley and I were watching through Next Generation a couple years ago, like straight through, and she kind of commented on, also all of a sudden he loves archaeology, and like it's never been mentioned before. And I was like, yeah, but they do come back to it. It does feel like that at first, where they're like, oh, like with Chakotay on Voyager, all of a sudden he's a boxer. It's like season 3 or season 4, and they're like, "Oh yeah, he was like a huge boxer in the academy. He lived for boxing." Okay,
then
first I'm hearing of it. Like, come on, okay. But yeah. Anyway, we should probably wrap this up. We've gone
an hour and a half because we got started a little late. Yeah, so we're at about our normal length. Of course, we don't normally go till 7 p.m. If we go to 7:30 when we start at 1 o'clock, we've got a problem. But I think right now we're doing good.
Yeah, we're okay. This is usually about the time when me and Jason are just about wrapping up our podcast recording. If it's a Sunday where we're recording podcasts, and we start at 3. So.
So your Sundays are very busy, but not with God.
Yeah, not with God. No, with movies and Star Trek, so, which I much prefer actually.
Yeah, they give much more valuable and topical life lessons.
Yes,
than the proper way to treat your slaves.
Yeah, exactly. Or how much to sell your daughter for. Because that's a timeless message that humanity needs now more than ever. So yeah.
If your holy book teaches you the proper way to treat slaves, maybe your holy book is missing a couple important points. But anyway, we should get going here. I've tried to come up with some witty wrap up, and I don't have one. Do you have one?
No, I don't. I should just, hey, if you're still watching this after 90 minutes, thanks.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks for watching.
you can see how many people are watching. I never have any idea.
Yeah, it's about right now. It looks like it's about 30.
Wow, I'm impressed.
I know, right?
Thank you.
And and I don't even have the live chat turned on, so they have nothing to entertain themselves with except watching us. That's impressive.
Yeah, it's 30. It's like those. Remember reading about when I guess Pittsburgh was in a period where they were Pittsburgh Pirates baseball team had some very poor attendance because they had some very bad teams for a while, and somebody commented, in other stadiums you have to guess the attendance, here you have to name them. I feel that might be where we are right now.
Oh yes, I don't mind so much.
But thank you. We do appreciate it. I do appreciate it.
Yes, I appreciate it too. Thanks everybody for watching, and
it's good to know that people actually care what we have to say.
Well, or at least
to some extent, or have nothing better going on,
or at least are listening, whether they care or not. They're just, I guess I'll put this on.
Yeah, I need to do something. This will be the background noise.
Exactly. While they're like, I don't know, folding their laundry or something. Are you really taking an hour and a half to fold your laundry? I mean,
yeah,
no shame in it if that's how long it takes. It takes as long as it takes, but get some help. Like, get someone to help you fold the laundry.
Baking stuff for Christmas party.
Hey, there you go, Christmas cookies, and they're like,
we didn't even mention Christmas or the holidays. I'm glad because it's still early December, and
yeah.
Anyway,
well,
so thank you everyone for watching. We appreciate it, and we will. I would imagine next month. With the way things are set up here. Not only am I not going to glance at the calendar, which is not in the shop, but the calendar actually got knocked off the wall while we were setting up the lights, so it's not even hanging on the wall right now. It's over here It's over here. See, I got the
nice.
It's over here.
I don't even know what day it is. Yeah, so we'll be back next month, and we can also say next year because we're at the end of the year. We can get extra fancy with it, and we'll I don't know, we'll do another one, talk about something else.
We'll figure that out a bit closer to broadcast time.
Yes, and how's that for a tease? We'll do another one next month, talk about something, I don't know.
Yeah.
So
we will talk about to be determined.
All right. Thanks for watching. Go ahead.
End every episode with that because it's always to be determined.
We'll talk about. We don't plan a month ahead. We're lucky if we plan a week ahead. Hey, are we doing a show tomorrow? What do you want to talk about?
Yeah, that's kind of how it goes. We usually don't know more than about 48 hours in advance that we're actually doing the show. Little behind the scenes magic there.
Yeah, and I think it reflects in the quality of the program.
And how tightly we stick to the topic and how knowledgeable we are about it.
It feels like they're just making this shit up as they go along. Yeah.
Whatever gave you that impression? That's not the. Oh look, Hallie's coming. Gotta go.
Gotta go. Oh, so anyway, for real though, thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll see you. We'll see you next month. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.